period of transition in which the liberalism and the nationalism start to prevail in the international stage, and new states and nations start to forge. Latin American countries were pioneers in the phenomenon. The French and American revolutions were extended to the Latin American colonies and introduced new principles to the political life and within the relationships among the states. These principles, considered liberals, rejected the absolute monarchies, establishing that the sovereignty belonged to the population and that their representatives needed to choose a government exercised by three different powers: legislative, executive, and judicial, as a means to guarantee the rights and the liberties of the individuals. Just as other Latin American viceroyalties in New Spain, the independence was achieved after a long struggle. So the Mexican state was born flimsy, indebted, with a paralyzed economy, a society completely divided and totally disorganized. And if that was not enough, the fame and prosperity of the nation because of its natural resources made it become a target of the ambitions of the new commercial powers. But in spite of all this, the enthusiasm and optimism to become a free country sponsored two projects of nation which did not work until finally a Republican liberal Spain was established. The new Hispanic society was formed by a human mosaic. Only 17.5% was formed by Spanish-born and Creoles. The Creoles were more educated, and 5% was owner of big fortunes and nobility titles. However, the majority was formed by ranchers, merchants, businessmen, officials, clergy, and low-rank military, aspiring for higher positions. Mexico City was enjoying a calm period when the 8th of June 1808, the news that Charles IV of Spain had abdicated in favor of his son Ferdinand arrived to New Spain, and almost immediately another disturbing news was received, that the crown of Spain was now in the power of Napoleon, who was trying to impose blockages against its enemy Great Britain, thus forcing Spain to allow his armies to cross its territories to submit Portugal, ally of the British. Spain rejected this imposition and summoned a reunion of the representatives of the nobility, the clergy, and the population to determine how the empire would be governed in absence of a legitimate king. During this unstable stage of Spain, conspirations in the New World started to sprout. The first one was discovered in the house of the king's chief magistrate, Don Miguel and Doña Josefa Ortiz de Domínguez, who would organize literary, social gatherings where captains of the Spanish army, such as Ignacio Allende, Juan Aldama, some priests, and among who was Miguel Hidalgo, an illustrated and former rector of the San Nicolás de Valladolid College, now Yucatan. The conspirators were planning to initiate an insurrection in December, but as they were discovered, they started the insurrection in September. That night, the hosts of Hidalgo occupied Miguel el Grande, and a few days later, Celaya, where he was named Generalissimo, and Allende, Lieutenant General. In Atotonilquillo, Hidalgo gave the insurgents the first banner of the Virgin of Guadalupe. All the inequalities and injustice extended the insurrection around all Mexico. José María Morelos, priest of Cuarácuaro, presented himself to Miguel Hidalgo, and he received the order to take Acapulco. By the end of October, Hidalgo's hosts were in the Mount of the Crosses at the doorsteps of Mexico City, where a big crowd got together and defeated 1,000 royal Creoles. A few days later, the insurgents stumbled with the royal army in Aculco and were defeated. Allende separates from Hidalgo and he goes to Guanajuato, and Hidalgo goes to Guadalajara. There he decrees the slavery abolition and declares that all communal lands were of the exclusive right of the indigenous people. Eventually, Allende joins Hidalgo again, defeated by the royalists that arrived from Spain. 5,000 disciplined soldiers, knowledgeable in military strategies, defeated 90,000 insurgent soldiers. The insurgent chiefs escape and go to the United States to look for support. In Saltillo, Hidalgo, Allende, Aldama, and José Mariano Jiménez were apprehended, taken to Chihuahua, where they were processed and condemned. They were decapitated and the heads were sent to Guanajuato, where they were hung each in one corner of the Alhóndiga de Granaditas, a big wall work in Guanajuato. In spite of the defeat, the viceroyalty was affected in the economy and the fiscal administration. After many discussions, the Constitution of 1812 was promulgated. The new supreme law established a constitutional monarchy with division of powers, liberty of press, tribute abolition, and the establishment of a militia to maintain the order and contribution to the defense in case of danger. The viceroys were banished and substituted by political chiefs. The Constitution satisfied many of the Creoles' aims of liberty, but they still did not have the autonomy and the liberty they hoped to attain. After all this, the priest Morelos was starting to be noticed as a great leader. His military talent took him to organize a small army, but very disciplined and well trained. Once Morelos conquered a great extension of territory, he proceeded to summon the Congress so it would start making to work its sovereignty to organize the government. The Congress was inaugurated in Chilpancingo with the document, Feelings of the Nation, where Morelos declared that the Americas were free and that the sovereignty belonged to the people and that the government should be divided among the three powers with laws equal to everybody, and that they would moderate the opulence and the poverty. After giving this declaration of independence, the Congress conferred him the executive power, and he adopted the title of Servant of the Nation. Afterwards, the Congress took the total power of the Congress, leaving Morelos without any liberty of action. And after having to face ecclesiastic degradation and trials, he was passed to arms the 22nd of December. 5 years of continuous struggle had devastated the country. By that time, New Spain seemed to have some years of peace, and the Spanish government opted for a conciliation approach. One more time, Spain sent a viceroy and offered amnesty to all the insurgents that was accepted by many. In 1817, there was another attempt for liberty headed by Servando Teresa de Mier and Javier Mina, but they were defeated by the royalists. Javier Mina was passed to arms and the emir was incarcerated. The prestige of the crown was totally worn out when they were unable to restore order, and in 1820 there was a possibility to consummate the independence. The king was forced to swear the Constitution of 1812 and to call for elections, summoning the courts. Loving Mexico thanks you for being with us today. Be sure to subscribe and leave a comment. Continue watching our videos and enjoy Loving Mexico.